The purpose of this video is to discuss post-black pill ingestion scenarios and solutions. This video presupposes an understanding and acceptance of black pill concepts. We assume viewers are past the stage of denying the preponderance of genetics on life outcomes and the importance of looks, categorized as face, height, and race.
What could you do to improve yourself?
6 p.m. and you just got back from work. You are productive and look forward to an evening of good copes. As you are reheating leftover rice and beans, you are hit with a twinging feeling of regret and ineptitude. You tell yourself, I should be doing more in life. It seems like your body is viscerally rejecting your life situation. You are suddenly flooded with a great deal of zeal and vigor. You robustly extract your laptop and begin typing with the ferocity of 1,000 suns. How to become a coder while learning at home, high-paying jobs near me, best investment strategies to retire early, how to acquire passive income. After a couple of hours, your zeal lessens and you realize that you are nearing your bedtime. You feel refreshed with your research, but lament the fact that you didn't have time for your daily after-work copes without realizing that you are engaging in the greatest cope of all, the idea of self-improvement. Self-improvement is synonymous with self-help. The notion is that through deliberate action to develop skills, knowledge, or personal qualities, people can achieve their goals and aspirations in life. Think of these goals as micro or helper goals to the ultimate goal, which is reproduction. Self-improvement is the assister to reproduction, the Scottie Pippen to the Michael Jordan. It is widely understood that in the absence of self-improvement, reproduction becomes a near impossibility in the modern world. With this knowledge in hand, man has kept his nose to the grindstone and self-improved to the point that self-improvement is considered a sacred god in our society, across all disciplines or schools of thought. We have even attached morality to the notion. The grinder is good, the lazy man is bad. The grinder has served his penance to the sacred god and is thus entitled to his reward, whereas the lazy man is a heretic that deserves nothing but the worst. This moral framework is a great dogma in our society, and is not even questioned by the greatest minds in our society. But is it really true? Does the grinder always win, and the indolent starve? Well, let's take a look. From the pharaohs of ancient Egypt, the emperors of ancient China and Japan, the monarchs of medieval Europe, and the tsars of imperial Russia, monarchies were the predominant form of political organization known to man. This meant that kings, queens, emperors, and other hereditary rulers held significant power and authority over their subjects. Monarchies are often associated with less social mobility and meritocracy, as power and authority were typically concentrated in the hands of a small, privileged elite. This meant that if you weren't born into the right family, you would most likely be subjected to back-breaking labor for the rest of your life. No self-improvement can save you.
And I have a message for you. It's over. It's really over. I can't cope anymore.
But this was all to change with the settlement of the Americas by European colonizers. This was the big break for most unwanted men in Europe to start fresh in a new land of immense opportunity. Couple this with the Industrial Revolution shortly after, and we are talking full-blown rags to riches. We are talking buying Bitcoin in 2010 and selling near its peak in 2021 types of rags to riches. At the forefront of this was a young runaway from Boston, arriving on the shores of Philadelphia on a brisk autumn day in 1723. This runaway was none other than Benjamin Franklin. Over the course of 60 years, this 17-year-old with little formal education would go on to become a writer, scientist, inventor, statesman, diplomat, and political philosopher. In his spare time, he was also involved in the framing of the Constitution and signed both the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. In recent times, he has been immortalized in rap culture, specifically by P. Diddy in his 1997 hit single, It's All About the Benjamins, which reached number 2 in the US Billboard Hot 100. Franklin's ascent was primarily due to his enterprise and intelligence. Franklin had risen from a fairly low station in life to the very top. His life stood as an example to what could be achieved in the New World. Franklin was a champion of the American dream. Not only was he a winner, but he also shared his secrets to success in his famous autobiography, and with it, the self-improvement industry was born. Now that we understand self-improvement and its roots, we can discuss its failings to the average man. It goes without saying that we do not live in the early America of Benjamin Franklin. Back then, the US was a cornucopia of economic opportunity mixed with a very salubrious, low-regulation business environment. They had a burgeoning financial system and swaths of natural resources for manufacturing and industrialization. There was plenty of cheap land, and the demographic issues we face today were non-existent. The America of Franklin is the embodiment of just be first. The America of today is a globalized, nepotistic, crony-capitalistic, greed-driven society that is more akin to corporate monarchy than the American dream ideals of Franklin. Globalization has increased competition at least tenfold. If you do not have the right genes, the competition is just too brutal. The only way to have a semblance of a chance is to be a high IQ man or athlete that starts focusing on his subject matter in early childhood or adolescence at the latest. Can you imagine a 17-year-old Benjamin Franklin arriving in Philadelphia today with little to no education or skills and achieving the same success? Most likely not. It is for this reason that we need to ditch this idea of self-improvement. We cannot rely on such antiquated advice tailored to a society brimming with opportunities centuries ago. We need new models. Collective models predicated on working together rather than competing against each other. Humans are designed to reproduce. That's a fact. In the animal kingdom, that manifests itself as a brutal competition for females. Greed is valued and selflessness punished. That doesn't have to be the case for human beings in modernity. I'm not being idealistic when I say that competition and greed are a usual but not structural design of human nature. Our current climate is akin to an iterated prisoner's dilemma. For those that do not know, the prisoner's dilemma is a game theory concept where two individuals are arrested and put in separate cells. The prisoners are not able to communicate with each other while in prison. Each prisoner is then given the choice to either confess to a crime or remain silent. If both individuals remain silent, they will each be given a relatively light sentence. If one individual confesses and the other remains silent, the one who confesses will receive a reduced sentence, while the other will receive a harsher sentence. If both individuals confess, they will each receive a moderate sentence. Now, life is more akin to an iterated prisoner's dilemma, where players can communicate and play the game repeatedly and can learn from each other's behavior over time. Another important concept is Nash equilibrium. It is a situation in which each individual is making the best decision they can given the decisions of the other individuals involved. In the case of the prisoner's dilemma, the Nash equilibrium is for both individuals to confess, even though this outcome is not the best for either individual. It is a Nash equilibrium because neither player can improve their outcome by changing their decision, given the decision of the other player. For the iterated version, the most stable equilibrium is often cooperation, but this requires trust and a long-term perspective on the part of both players. Now, this is essentially how we play the game of self-improvement. Our physical body is imprisoned by our genes. Our genes have the sole objective of reproduction. We go about this by attempting to self-improve to enhance our reproductive chances. If enough men do this, as we begin to see in the West, the competition for mates increases and female hyper-selectivity is exacerbated. This leads eventually to an iterated prisoner's dilemma with the only stable Nash equilibrium predicated on cooperation and long-term partnership. Consider a prisoner's dilemma where confession is equal to self-improvement and staying silent is not actively self-improving. By that I mean enjoying healthy copes, pursuing your passions, and not trying to become a mogger. On average, if you were to self-improve, it forces me to self-improve or I risk a worse outcome. This manifests itself in the real world as less money, being seen as less attractive, getting mogged, and having less opportunities to date in general. Now, if we play the iterated game and you always select self-improvement as your best decision, I will do the same as well. This creates a situation where we are stuck at that outcome into perpetuity. But in the iterated game, other variables are also in play, considering we are playing long-term. The cost of living increases, so we both work harder and longer to maintain our purchasing power without necessarily getting ahead. Women become more selective, so we both resort to taking steroids and surgery maxing to ascend. Essentially, we are technically improving, but worse off in the long run. Instead, if we discussed amongst ourselves to stay silent, i.e. focus on our passions, hobbies, and healthy copes, in the next iteration, instead of purposely trying to mog each other, we would achieve greater individual outcomes for everyone. I should note that I am discussing a scenario affecting sub-8 men. Chad will always mog and win. His considerations are not accounted for in this game theory explanation because cooperation is not required for him to achieve his best outcomes. In other words, Chad will always confess. Nonetheless, we can ensure greater reproductive success for most men by cooperating. It is the only way. Now, I'm not saying that you cannot ascend through self-improvement. Frankly, I do not know your genetic makeup or life situation. What I'm saying is self-improvement in 2023 will get you some, but not as much as you could have got if you cooperated. It takes wisdom to understand that your best decision at an individual level will not improve the totality of your outcomes in the long run. We need new allegories and stories that are intertwined with morality to curb female hyperselectivity. In the past, we had religion and marriage. This is the only way to truly enhance your outcomes. I will expand on this topic in a future video. In the meantime, awaken your mind from habitudinous slumber.
Because this brings up the question, why should you ever be cooperative with another individual if you're a social animal? At every possibility, you should stab him in the back and be selfish. And the reason why that isn't a good idea is there's all sorts of circumstances where many hands make the task light, or whatever that is. Cooperation can have synergistic benefits.